Just waiting for Britt to join. Here we go.
There we are.
What's up, Britt?
Not much, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Good, good. It's a new year.
Yeah, new year.
New year.
New year, new you, or?
Nah, man. God's still good. I'll just say
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I agree with that.
Cool.
Alrighty. So we got a couple people online. Let's just go for it.
Okay, cool.
All right. So today, we're going to talk about a little bit of positive self-talk.
Yep.
I know there are a couple of different directions we can go from there, but we'll just flow and just let it come natural, as we always do. So for you, do you want to just give a little explanation or definition for yourself? What is positive self-talk for yourself?
Sure. I mean, I'll start off just general as far as just kind of how I would define self-talk in general, right? So I would say that it's just an inner dialogue, right, that we have with ourselves, and this could be in sport, but it's just daily life too. But basically, it's just an inner dialogue that we have, and there's different types of self-talk we'll get into, but obviously that can be positive or negative. That's how I define it.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Same thing. Just the words and phrases, whatever that you think and say to yourself, like you said, whether it's negative or positive, and those things could be affected by the environment, could be affected by past performances, or of you thinking ahead to something. All those things can come into play as well. So, and those performances in the past could be negative or positive that affect the way you view yourself. So yeah, that's pretty much how I would define it as well.
Yep. I would add too that it could be out loud as well, so, you know what I mean? Because it could be kind of internal, right? Things we say in our own minds, but a lot of times it also is verbal. Just wanted to add that.
Right.
What's up, Marcus? Sorry, I had to say out in.
No, it's fine. And everybody who joined, thank you for joining. How you guys
What's up, Frankie?
today? Hope you guys starting off your new year right.
Welcome.
So piggybacking off of the environment, do you think that someone's environment should have a role in like how well they self-talk? Let's say, like, if they're in a specific environment and they know that they can perform a skill, but they may have not performed it well in the past, and now they go into that same environment, and although they can perform that skill, now they give themselves some negative words to themselves, and don't feel as confident. Do you think that should play a role in how someone really feels or talks about themselves?
I mean, I think that's common and it happens. I mean, I think to answer your question, I think mental toughness, right? The answer to that should be no, right? That past performances, past situations, or whatever, anything in the past, I don't think it should affect our self-talk, because I think really the goal is to be more intentional about it. But I do want to recognize, though, that we are human, right?
Absolutely.
Whether we're in the athletics or whatever kind of aspect you're in, that human response is going to be more of kind of a gut reaction and tends to be an emotional reaction. So that's there. But like I said, I think as you train this and you really get intentional about your self-talk and having it be more positive, it's going to kind of go in the other direction, where the context it doesn't really have as an effect.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if you're able to perform a skill and you're very confident in that skill, I don't think that the environment should really change whether or not you talk down on yourself or positive. I think if you can perform it, you should be able to perform it, and it should only be nothing but positivity. So I definitely agree with where you're going. So let's jump into some examples of different types of self-talk. We know that it could be positive and negative, but there are also different types of self-talk. Is motivational, instructional. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was just peeking a little bit at some research, and it's kind of funny because there's a lot of, I mean, you can really go into a whole bunch of different types of self-talk, right? Even like,
Right.
Self-talk that's irrelevant, right? And for example, like endurance runners, that's kind of very common for them. It's kind of like a distraction type of strategy. So it's just a side note, but different types are out there. But I think maybe for those watching, motivational and instructional might be more relevant to them or common that they can relate to. But instructional is more kind of technique, right? That might be, and it's really process focused, right? Focus on the present moment and basically performance, right? Whatever that performance goal is in the moment. So it's instructional, motivational, right? Sounds just like what it sounds like. Really more about confidence and keeping yourself kind of focused as well in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know we kind of like had a little discussion before we jumped on the live video, and we were kind of saying that for certain sports and certain instances, maybe instructional self-talk isn't helpful, or it could be. So let's talk about that a little bit in different scenarios when it would or would not be helpful. I know that all right, let's take basketball for example. Obviously, we both around basketball. If we talk about positive self-talk from the instructional side, we could say that, if you're a shooter, just shoot, don't get caught up in the whole mechanical thing, era of everything. But at the same time, you have to have awareness. And I think it all comes down to being aware. So you being able to have that shooter's mentality, but at the same time, don't let anything really affect, the shot, but you're aware too of something that's going wrong. If it's something mechanical or a little tweak that you're mindful of it, and you're able to give yourself that self-talk to, okay, let me fix this, rather than saying, oh, you know what, I suck, I'm a bad shooter.
Right. No, I agree. And like we were saying earlier, I think, technical cues, things like that, kind of short phrases, I think are good. But I gave the example with you earlier, like in baseball, right? If you're in the batter's box, thinking about mechanics and technique is definitely not what you want to do. And I think with basketball, there's examples of that as well. But really, at the end of the day, right, when we're training, we're practicing, that's what we're doing, right? We're paying attention to technique and form and sharpening those things. But when we get on the court and it's time to go, it's time to compete, right? When you're in the batter's box, it's just time to hit the ball, right? It's just swing, right? You know what I mean? Just shoot. And basically trust the training preparation you put in. I think that's what a lot of athletes may struggle with, is kind of when it is time to perform, they're still thinking, and that's not what you want when you're performing. You just want to perform. You just want to compete. So that's kind of my side note on that. So like I said, kind of technical cues are okay, but understanding that getting super instructional during competition can really not really, help you. And yeah, one thing I thought about too when you said this is like shooting slumps, right? So I'm sure we've all experienced that. And I remember, when I would go through that, that's really what's happening, I think, right? What you're so in your head about, like, why is my shot not falling, right? You're thinking about technique, like, man, is it my legs? And is it my fingers, like my hand placement? Like, and I think that's just interesting that I just thought about that. But I think that's common during those periods of time.
Yeah, and that's perfectly normal, because I know even for myself, I was a victim to that. And not to say that it helped me or hurt me, but it definitely was more on the instructional side of the self-talk, and like, okay, like, is it my elbow? Is it my hand placement? Like you said, is it my follow through? Like, what is it? Yeah. But at the same time, throughout those times, I don't think that I ever, told myself, oh, I'm a bad shooter, which would kind of be an example of negative self-talk. So, and to replace all that, you just stick to your guns, and the preparation that you put in. So it's like, I'm a great shooter. And this is where the positive self-talk stuff comes into play, more, and this is less instructional, but more motivational. I am a great shooter.
There we go.
This whole series about, what you're able to do, and you trusting your skills. And so that way you're taking less focus on the instructional side, but more focus on the motivational side. So I guess it's like a give and take kind of deal.
Yeah. That's
sure.
a good point. That's good. Yep.
So I think we're supposed to talk about now how does it really help performance. So we know that research shows that, before performance, it can help with positive self-talk, can help with mitigating anxiety. It also helps with controlling focus and stuff like that. What else would you say that the research shows behind it helping positive self-talk, helping for performance?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at some research, and really one thing that I thought was interesting, it kind of talks about the areas in which self-talk has an impact, right? So looking at cognitions, right? So they'd say, attentive and concentrated, right? And then, motivation, like we talked about with confidence, behaviors, right? So that's going into kind of the technical part of it, and then emotions, right? So I think when we're talking about this, it's good to be aware of all those areas that it affects. And frankly, okay, I have positive self-talk or I have negative self-talk, right? And how that self-talk kind of sounds is going to affect all those areas. So I think that's something to think about. But yeah, good point with you as far as the pregame, because I was thinking more of kind of during performance, but definitely with the pregame, um, man, I mean, I think the moment you wake up game day, it starts.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
starts, kind of what you're speaking over yourself. It has a huge impact, kind of throughout your whole day and how you kind of approach, big moments and games in general. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah. And like my whole thing is like what you focus on expands. So like whatever, like
Mm,
game day, if you're focusing on everything, um, but the positivity and trusting all the ability and trusting all the hard work that you've put in, if you've done
yeah,
those things, done the preparation, then if you focus on that, then that will be the outcome that you receive. If you focus on all the negative things and the doubt and the fear and you being afraid, then that's when those things actually occur. So you have to be careful
yep.
because your mind is very powerful, as we all know. So to stick to more positive vibes and you will see more positive outcomes.
Without a doubt, what you focus on expands. I love that. And I think one interesting thing I think I want to touch on too is when it comes to positive self-talk, as far as specific statements and kind of the grammar of it, right? So whether we're using the first person, right, like I, versus, you or we, or using your name, right, in the third person. I just want to make a note that, research does show that speaking in the third person actually is more powerful and has a better, a greater impact on performance. I don't know if you've heard or, kind of heard of that, but I think that's pretty interesting. And maybe we can kind of dive in a little bit as far as, what that means and maybe why that has such a great impact versus kind of first person.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I have seen research on it. For me personally, I pretty much talking like I more so like
Mm-hmm.
I am great at this, more like the whole I and the affirmation,
Affirmations.
yeah, type of style. So that's what the route that I take, but that's what works for me.
There we
And
go. Yep.
for everyone, it may be something different. So I guess you would just have to try it out and see which resonates with you more and which one do you feel helps you out better. Or,
Without a doubt.
yeah,
No, that's a good point. I think, for those who maybe want to experiment with the third person, I think one thing, because I think this works for me on a personal note too, is just being able to distance myself kind of
from the situation.
from the emotions of it, right? And I think kind of helps you gain control. So that might be something, if you're watching, you want to try out kind of doing it more in the third person, using your name in it. Like I said, can kind of create that distance you might need if the emotions are really taking over you, in that moment.
Right.
Yep,
Okay.
definitely.
So yeah, so let's get to like the practical side of things. So like how do we go from a negative self-talk to a positive self-talk? Like how do we go from thinking certain things about ourselves to changing that thinking all of a sudden? And we know obviously this is something that obviously takes work. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something, it takes practice, and you have to be very diligent and aware. As we stated before, that's the most important thing. So what are some ways I could start it off by just saying, like, the first thing is you have to recognize your thoughts.
There we go.
A lot of people, they blame everything else rather than putting the ownership on themselves, because
Yeah,
we control our thoughts. Plain and
yeah,
simple, we control. We may, now our thoughts may not be something good, but then that's when we have to be able to recognize them. So
yeah,
just having that awareness to be able to recognize the thoughts and pay attention to that chatter that you're saying to yourself, and be able to notice whether or not it's negative or positive, then that's half the battle right there. So I think that's
yeah.
step one. Where would you go from there?
Um, Man, I would just second it. Like you said, it's the awareness piece of it, and You know, I would be lying if I said that this wasn't something that I'm continuously working on. I think as human beings, it's just what we're constantly trying to grow in that area, because I think, like I said, kind of our gut reaction to things, and this gets deep. You know, we're talking about context, and we can even get into coaching behaviors and how coaches can influence the self-talk that the athletes have, and just the environment and the culture that you're in definitely affects that, and personality factors, all that kind of stuff affects kind of our automatic thoughts. But hey, we have automatic thoughts, and they tend to be kind of negative, and being aware of that is the first step. But then, like we say, kind of going into that second step is about being intentional about it. And that comes from really, it just comes from being intentional about it, putting effort into it. Because once we recognize those negative thoughts, those automatic thoughts, and then also being aware of the context that they tend to surface in, right? We can understand triggers and things like that. Okay, that's the deal. That's kind of what I'm struggling with. Now, how do I want to reframe those, right? Replacing them with positive statements, so that when those moments come, those triggers come, I have those go-to statements that I can use. And like we said, it takes practice, because it's hard, but if you're serious about it, you can do it.
Yeah. And I mean, just having the awareness, I think, to being able to be aware and then be able to redirect the thoughts as well into
Right.
A place where you need to take it. You know, just, you know, everyone knows, you know, negativity is nothing good that comes out of it. It just puts you in a bad state, bad mind. It messes up with your emotions. So, you know, just being able to recognize and then be able to redirect it. And then you can, different ways that you can redirect it. You know, it could be, some people, it could be like a word, you know, a positive word that puts them in that positive state of mind. Or it puts them in a situation where they see themselves doing something successful for whatever related task that they're doing. Or it could be also a visual image. So it could be a visual image of themselves doing the same thing, something of them succeeding at whatever the task is that they're doing. So that's something that I would say that could help with switching from a negative self-talk to a positive self-talk.
Yep. No, I agree 100%. 100%. It's a process, right? And be patient with yourself when it comes to it. Like I said, man, I think we're all working on that. But I do want to just add one note on this, and we talked about it, you and I, via text, but I know personally, I know some athletes that use negative self-talk, and it's very intentional, right, for them. And they've claimed, you know, to have some benefits of that. And I just want to speak to anybody on here, or whoever watches this later, if that's you, you know, like we said, this stuff is really, it's personal, right? So we can kind of share this and preach this stuff, but at the end of the day, it comes down to your unique situation, your personality, your background, and kind of just who you want to be as an athlete and what works for you, right? So if negative self-talk works for you, hey, it works for you, right? But I think what we're trying to say is just to be cautious about it and understand that there could be some pitfalls to it. And again, understand your triggers, recognize certain, you know, situations where maybe that negative self-talk isn't as beneficial, right? It kind of gets you down that emotional route, gets you distracted from kind of the task at hand, gets you kind of all up in your ego, right? Worrying about the outcome as opposed to the process. Just be aware of that. That's what I'll say to that.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Like me personally, I can't ever say that I've used negative self-talk. Usually when I talk negative of myself, things just go downhill from there. So I just stay away from it. Yeah, I don't see really the benefit. But like you said, it's unique to everyone. Some people may use it because it backs them up in the corner, and then they have nothing else to do but to get out of it. And they like that feeling, and it works. So, you know, by any means, you know, it works for them. So
whatever works.
Whatever works. Whatever works.
Definitely.
But yeah, those were like some practical ways to go about it. Did you have any questions regarding the positive self-talk? I know I had a couple questions. They were like more general, but we can go off of some questions that you may have.
If you have self-talk specific questions, you go first, because I don't have any.
No, what I'm saying is I don't have any self-talk specific questions.
Okay, then let's just do it. I'll go first.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
All right, so we have a few. So number one, I had a question come in, and it's basically just tips on visualization. Just tips on, I guess, maybe that person is kind of new to it, or they just want some advice on it. I'll kind of give my 2 cents, and you can go. But I think if I could just say something real quick to that, I would just say make it as realistic as possible. I think a lot of times, I think the difference between visualization and imagery, right? If you're new to that, imagery is an image, right? And there's 5 senses to that. Visualization is kind of just what you see. So if you can kind of make that shift more to imagery, I think you're going to see benefits to that. And again, just including all 5 senses into that image you have, and it really it makes it more real for the brain. And the brain can't really tell between what's real and what's imagined. And that's why we have that benefit when we do that.
Yeah, I would agree too. Just making sure that you include all your 5 senses. The people only think that it's only the sight of them envisioning something, but it's also what would you smell in that particular moment.
Yeah.
How would the taste buds in your mouth taste? It
Yep.
sounds like those things wouldn't really matter, but
That's real.
those little details, it makes it real. It makes it
Yeah.
real. So just putting all those small details together that you wouldn't really necessarily think about and putting them all into one, I think it really makes the whole situation a bit more realer, and it helps you, visualize better.
Right. And be patient too. Again, be patient with it. It actually is difficult for some people. For me, it definitely has been in the past. So if you can't visualize all 5 senses, start with 2, start with 3. Do what you can, but be patient because it is kind of hard to create all that at once sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want me to jump
Yeah.
on or do a question? All right.
Yeah.
So I have a question that said, what's the difference between having a positive mindset and suppressing emotions? Okay. I would say, so what's the difference between having a positive mindset and suppressing emotions? So I would say suppressing emotions is kind of like you're trying to act like they're not there. You're trying to get rid of them. And that's not really realistic, because we have to be aware that, whether we have a negative mindset or positive mindset, it's there. We can't get rid of it. The only thing that we can do is trying to shift from one to another or remain the same. So suppressing emotions is kind of like getting rid of them. The emotions, rather than a positive mindset, if we're talking about going from a negative to a positive mindset, would be something that we're just shifting how we feel, not how we feel, but we're just shifting our mindset towards a more positive outlook. And I would say that having a positive mindset, that kind of sticks with you, but suppressing emotions, it would be something where you try to get rid of those feelings or emotions, but eventually they'll come back to you. That's what I think.
That's just what it is. Yeah. I would say to that, I think of, kind of what is mental toughness. And I think that really what it is being resilient in the face of adversity. And what is adversity? A lot of times it is battling with kind of our inner self, our inner thoughts, our inner emotions, and kind of what life has for us, whether that be life in general or sport specific. But I think that's what mental toughness is. In the face of those emotions, being able to, did we lose him? I think, are you still there?
No, I'm here. I don't know what happened. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm here.
There we go. We're here. Okay. Basically what it is to staying strong and be resilient in the face of those emotions. And I think that's what a positive mindset is. So like you said, I think, kind of putting away with those emotions doesn't really do much for you. They're still there.
Yeah, they're still, and even if you think they're going away, they're going to come back,
Yeah. So that's a good question though. Okay. All right. So my last one here is how to put down trash talkers. So this is kind of, I don't know why I'm laughing. It's just a funny question to me, but so I'll answer first. So kind of the way that I've kind of unpacked this. First off, I'm not a big trash talker. I guess that's why it's funny to me. But really, we have to understand what trash talk is about. I think in a sport context, really, it's a mental strategy, right? It's a psychological strategy
for some athletes.
For some athletes, right? And that's my point. Listen here, right? So, some people enjoy trash talk, right? And it's again part of their strategy. It's fun for them. It's part of the passion of the game, right? And actually, for some, it actually increases their confidence, right? If they can kind of dominate somebody verbally or psychologically, it's just like, I'm the stuff, right? So if that's you, that's you. But from this question, it sounds like, maybe that's not kind of what their situation is. So I would just say this: understand that you can't control what your opponents say or do, right? But what you can control is yourself and kind of your strategy when it comes to that kind of stuff, right? So your goal essentially would be to kind of put up some type of protection or guard against that kind of psychological part that you're dealing with. And so I think self-talk, I think it goes with it. right? There's a number of different things that you can use. But I think self-talk is good, right? Because what it does, it helps you to refocus on what's important, refocus on what's internally, what you're trying to accomplish, and kind of keep up that mental toughness. But again, it's just a mental strategy. It's a distraction. If you fall into that, you're doing exactly what they want. So being able to go to something and self-talk is good to kind of keep you focused. That'd be my answer.
Yeah, and I like that you went the positive self-talk route. For me, yeah, I would just say just let your game speak.
That too.
Usually, like when you just, whatever it is, you ball out. Eventually they'll stop talking. Like you let your game speak. You don't have to do any talking, and it'll speak. See, for me, like I can do both, and I can trash talk back, which is probably not a good thing because sometimes I probably take myself out my game by getting into the trash talk.
Yeah.
But like you said, for some people, they live off that. It's like
it helps them.
They have to talk, and I know everyone's played against somebody who they have to talk. They have to say something for them to get them going. So the best thing for you to do is don't even acknowledge it, and then they can get going into their own game, and then eventually they'll fade out, and you won't have to worry about it.
Right, because they're feeding off your reaction anyway.
Exactly.
Sorry, I paused for a second.
No, yeah,
we're good. But yeah, that's all I got. You got another question?
Yeah, I have one more. It says, how do you turn a bad mood around?
This is just general, or?
Yeah, just like feeling bad and turning around to something good. So I listen. I mean, everything starts with awareness. Like, the more you're aware of, where you are in the state of being that you are, and if you're trying to change that, if you're aware, it just makes it so much easier to transition over. I would say that, with that being said, with being aware, you also, it's like you can, like we touched about it earlier. You control your thoughts. So people, a lot of people, they say, oh, I'm feeling bad, and they let their feelings dictate their mood, and now they're gonna have a bad day because they're feeling bad. But you control that. You know what I mean? Like you control, like, even you can have the worst thing happen to you in the world, but you can choose to either be negative about it or positive. And whether or not, it may start off as you being negative, and depending on the situation, you may be like, oh, you might talk down on yourself, but then that's when you make the choice, and it's on you to make a decision. Do I want to feel like this, or am I going to continue to feel like this, or I'm going to shift it and do something that's a little bit more helpful for me, and then may change the way my overall mood is. It may not change the feeling completely, but it definitely will help. So just being aware of that you're in a bad mood or a rut or whatever, and being able to, shift it towards something that a greater mood, because obviously if you're asking that question, you want to be in a better mood, a good mood.
Right.
So just be aware, just awareness is key. Be aware.
Yeah. I would say two things. First, the human condition is hard, right? I think emotions, that's, emotions are hard to deal with at times, but I would say, I would battle it, because this is something I'm doing too, is gratefulness and joy, and trying to meditate on that and have that be kind of that forefront emotion that you want, right? Like I said, it starts when you wake up, right? It starts the minute you wake up on game day or just any day you have. I think gratefulness and thankfulness kind of can combat that. Secondly, I think in the sport context, for me as an athlete, I struggle with that for a period of time. And really kind of my solution to that is really, I made the decision that I would just show no emotion. And that worked for me, but I had to make that decision to kind of come into the game and have that game face on, and not really give my opponents anything from me as far as my reactions to things. It was in my head, but it wasn't given to them to kind of use to their advantage or get me to kind of go off balance. So It kind of had a double purpose to it. But I guess that's just, maybe something to think about if it's a sport related question. I think for me, it worked for me. It's just to really just make that decision that I'm just not going to give my opponents or really anything. And it helps me to stay centered and not get so emotional. But there's different techniques you can use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all the questions we have. If anybody else has a question regarding positive self-talk or any practical ways to, shift your mindset, Drop your questions into the comment box, or shoot us a DM with the
Yeah.
questions, and we'll gladly, you know, answer them. We can bring them back up in the next IG live that we do. Whatever we feel is best, we'll do it. But for sure, get those questions to us, and we'll answer them for sure. Anything else you have to say?
No, definitely just drop them in the DMs. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And again, if anyone's interested in diving into this further, as far as kind of their personal journey with mental training and all that kind of stuff, I'm open to it. Hit me up in the DMs. We'll get going with you.
And Britt, we have to mention, guys, go download the Mental Minute on
Okay,
iTunes, Spotify, everything. It's fire. It's imagery, but it's a different type of with some swag. We're gonna just put it like that, with some swag. It's imagery with some
I appreciate
swag.
that. I appreciate that. Yeah,
So
go ahead and follow the Mental Minute on IG. There's information there, but basically it's an EP, it's a project. Basically, it's a mental training project. Was totally different. Go ahead and check it out. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Check that out. Go download it, and just add it to your routine before you work out, whatever. It could definitely help you out. So go follow Britt, Heart and Soul Consulting, Mental Minute. Go follow her. Make sure you show her some love on her page. You guys can show me love as well. Any questions you have, definitely shoot them our way, and we'll get them answered. If you guys also have any other topics that you want us to discuss, for sure, throw them our way. We're looking to do this more often, so any way that we can be of value to you guys and help you guys out along your journey, and whether that's through athletics or just performance in general, or just your daily lives, just shoot them our way, and we'll be glad to answer your questions in any way possible.
Exactly. We're here to serve you guys, so we appreciate the support. Everyone that came in and you know, hung out for a little bit with us, we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right then.
All right. Well, you have a great day, and we'll get back to it the next time we hop on.
Without a doubt. All right, David. Appreciate it. Catch you later.
All right. No doubt. Take care.
See ya.